What is going on, cyberspace? Welcome to the HyperPixel Podcast. I am MichaelK, and I'm joined once again today through the coldest and deepest, darkest realms of cyberspace by none other than XERAEN himself in the igloo known as Sector X. What is going on, brother?
I'm trying to keep warm. Actually, it's not too bad. So my heat's been running. It's actually very cold outside. There's snow on the ground.
Excellent.
Yeah. But I'm not warm
excellent
today.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. But I thought I was going to have to bring out the beanie this morning. I didn't.
Cool. I did.
Thank you,
because I'm
CyberSpace. Yeah. Well, I mean, man. I'm not having to bundle up yet. It is January here in Sector X, as it is in everywhere in cyberspace, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
So give it like a couple weeks and it's probably going to go below zero. And then I'll definitely have to be bundling up. So we'll see how that goes. But fingers crossed it won't be too bad this year. It wasn't last year. So
well, that's good.
But yeah, all good generally. Just hanging, doing the thing. How about you, man? How you doing?
Very cool. I'm doing well. I am attempting to stay warm. I have a space heater directly behind me right here to heat me up, because this room, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but this room is like the extreme of every temperature that's happening outside. So if it's summer, it's like 90 degrees in this room. It has to cool, from that. And then if it's cold outside, then it's, sub-zero temperatures up here. So there's that.
So what you're saying is that if it's cold outside, then like your room there turns into a Cool Borders track.
That is correct. 1000% accurate. Nailed it.
Man, I love that game so much. Like I play Cool Borders 2 so much.
I've like had very minimal time with that game or those games. I know. I need to.
Yeah, I played so that was one of the first games we got when we had a PlayStation 1.
Mm-hmm.
This is a complete tangent, but
I'm okay with it. Proceed. Go on.
So I think I'm pretty sure the first game I ever got on PlayStation 1 was PaRappa the Rappa, because that may not be true. All I know is that when we got a PS1, I don't think we really had any games. We had like the demo disc, and there's the PaRappa demo on that, and I was like, I got to get this game because that was like the beginning, as far as I was aware, of like music rhythm games.
Uh-huh.
And, me being the musician minded person that I was, I was like, heck yeah, let's do this. And I love that game. But yeah, Cool Borders, that was actually a game my brother got, and we played it so much, the second one. So much so that as soon as the third one came out, we got it too. And it's a much better video game than the second one, as I recall. It controls better, and it looks newer, nicer, all that kind of stuff. But it seemed like it was missing something about the spirit in Cool Borders 2. There's just something that's like really edgy, raw, which really fits the snowboarding theme of Cool Borders 2, that it's just like, and it was like at the right time in history where it came out. It's like everything about it is just right for it to be what I think is a pretty great video game.
Yeah.
And I haven't played it forever. I really need to go back. I don't know if we still have our copy. I doubt it. I'd probably need to get it again. And honestly, it's probably expensive at this point to be.
What? Yeah. I think the Cool Borders games aren't that pricey. I know PaRappa is. That's like I think it was like $140 game the last time I looked it up.
I have no idea where my copy is. I'm sad about that.
Mm-hmm. I've never
$9.99. Are you serious?
Okay.
Tested complete Cool Borders 2. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm going to buy the crap out of that, dude.
There you go.
I have to stream that.
That's what I love about like the whole retro collecting thing, is like sometimes you look up something, you're like, surely this is the most expensive game imaginable. It's like, $15. We're good here.
Right.
No problem.
Yeah. Dude, I'm 100% down for that. That's happening.
Excellent. I like to hear that. I've never really played those beyond just like playing them in like, in some kiosk situation in a store or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've actually never played PaRappa the Rapper.
Oh, brother!
I know,
dude. It's like you need to play this video game.
I know.
It's not long. It's really not.
It's on my list, but unfortunately, it's pricey. So yeah.
What? I mean, you can borrow it from me.
I could in fact do that. So
I really need to figure out where those games are. They may be at my parents' house, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really think they may be. I would just have to find out where, because like I never took them with me. I know my brother had taken some of our video game stuff, and I'm not going to go into it, but he had lent out some of it, and it's just like my gold Legend of Zelda NES.
Yikes!
Gone.
Yikes!
Gone. Anyway, I'm not going to think about that because I don't want to talk about how that makes me feel.
Right.
Anyway, so I don't know where those games are, like especially like our PS1 and some of our PS2. Most of our PS2 games I think I took,
mm-hmm.
but I know some of them I didn't. So I don't know. I just have to go and track all that down.
Yeah, you should definitely do that. There might be some gems in there, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least to play, because some of the games I never finished or barely even started, or if it was like my brother's game, like most of those I didn't even really play.
Yeah, it's amazing how many details you forget about in those games that maybe you played through as a kid or something, and then like you go back and play it now, and it's like, wow, I remember this, but I don't remember all these freaking little details all over the place. And maybe it's just because we were kids when we played it.
Yeah,
but
it's quite possible.
When I played through Metal Gear Solid this past year, it was pretty similar to that. Like I did not beat Metal Gear Solid as a kid. I got pretty far in it, and then I actually watched a friend play through the rest of it. He was like towards the end of the game. I don't really know how that whole scenario played out, but I watched him play through the latter half of it, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm good here, you know.
Right.
So playing through it for myself, it was definitely like, whoa, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, that's the story of me and Metal Gear Solid. I've still not played it all the way through myself. I about same as you. I played through certainly all the first disc and some of the second. But yeah, I never got past that personally. But I've watched it all the way through. I've watched people play it. I've watched people speed run it. I've watched video games the movie sort of thing where people cut together the cutscenes to kind of make a movie out of it. I did that of all of them except for 4, because I got up to 4 and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do 4 finally.
Yeah.
And then it's like 3 hours of cutscenes, or actually I think it's maybe more than that.
Right.
And it's like, holy crap.
Yeah. I do want to play through the other Metal Gear Solids, but yeah, for that same reason, I'm kind of like,
Yeah, 2 is really good. Like, I think 2's probably the best. And 3, this should be a different podcast, because we could talk about Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear series generally in a podcast. We need to write. I'm writing this down right now. I'm going to type it in our list. Metal Gear series.
Put it right in there.
It's there.
Excellent.
But I think 2's the best. I think 3, a lot of people have a really fond memory of, because I think the people who do are generally the ones where that may be the first one that they played.
Is 3 on PS2?
I think there's a version of it, but it was originally on GameCube.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So it's Snake Eater. I don't like it because it goes back into the past, and it's Naked Snake, I think, which I guess is Big Boss, who ends up coming. Spoilers, Big Boss. Anyway, there's some cool mechanics in it, and I've watched a lot of playthroughs of that. So there's, if anybody isn't aware of this and you're interested in Metal Gear in any sort of way, there is a Twitch channel, and I don't know how active they are now. I think they're still pretty active, but they had some things where they changed stuff up. But it is a Twitch channel called Outer Heaven, which Outer Heaven's like one of the Sky Fortress things from, well, I mean, Metal Gear Solid 5 talks about it some, but originally it's from the original Metal Gear games, where they talk about like the sky base where they're trying to create for, I don't remember exactly. It's like most Metal Gear things. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of things that people say about stuff, and then they change and they retcon and then etc. Anyway, but yeah, Outer Heaven, it was 3 guys, and it's mainly one guy, DRK, like in some number, DRK. And then there's 3 Dog, which he also does a lot of like Silent Hill stuff on his channel. And I can never remember what the third guy's name is. But they would do like 24-hour, 36-hour, 48-hour marathons of the series, and they would play. Yeah, they would play Metal Gear, Metal Gear 2, Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah, and it's like, whoa, Peace Walker, like all the side games and stuff too,
dude.
And they have a lot of knowledge about it. And when they play it on like the most extreme difficulty, like European Extreme on Metal Gear Solid 2, and it's like they would do like runs where it was like no alert runs on the most difficult. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So like if they accidentally triggered one, they would just stop and restart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's like, I've seen some of that where they're like at the end of the game and it's like, oh my God. But
people that do that though, it's like I feel like every time I've watched somebody do one of those runs, like they can be almost towards the end and like something like that happens and they're just like, there's no frustration at all. They're just like, okay, reset, you know?
Yeah, but because they're not invested in the outcome. The whole point is what they're doing. And so it's just another step in what they're doing. And you know, sometimes depends on who they're all different kind of characters, the guys that do the speedruns too. So like you get a different flavor when stuff like that happens, depending on who's doing it. So it's pretty cool. If you like Metal Gear at all, I highly recommend you go check out the Outer Heaven Twitch channel. If you haven't seen it, surely you've seen it if you watch streamers at all, but if not, it's worth it. It's worth it. Check it out. Anyway, so I've watched a lot of 3 and I probably know the story of 3 pretty well compared to the other ones that I haven't played. But it's just, the feeling of it's just off to me. I don't like it. I don't like the old technology. I don't like the old stuff. I'm not a huge old things person generally. And so it just strikes me as weird. And I understand why people like it. Anyway, we need to stop having this discussion because I'm going to really go
save it for when we do the Metal Gear podcast.
I'm going to shelve that.
Yeah.
But I do think the second one is probably the best game of the series.
I started the second one and I got stuck somewhere, and then it was one of those situations where I got distracted by something else and I was stuck. And so I just kind of moved on.
Yeah.
And sadness.
The worst part of 2 is that it's a real troll that, I mean, do you know anything about how it unfolds?
No. I can't remember the story at all, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll just say, you play as Raiden, right? So the biggest troll is you don't ever play as Snake, really. So it's like, what? It's a Metal Gear Solid game or Metal Gear game.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. But the reason why you don't is actually really brilliant. And people still got mad about it. And it's like, if you really understand what's going on and you really follow the story to the extent that you can with what it actually reveals, then you have to appreciate what Kojima did with it. You really just have to, from my perspective.
People just get so mad about stories not going the way they expect.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where Metal Gear Solid was so cool and it made Snake so real versus like the older Metal Gear games, especially like old fans of the series, that it was just, it felt like a bait and switch because you play as him at the beginning, but that's like it.
Dude, having just played through the first Metal Gear Solid, like 1000% it holds up. Like it's crazy. Like you're looking at these graphics. I mean, it's like, kind of early-ish PS1 graphics, so it is what it is,
right?
But like, I don't know, like all the audio, just the storytelling, everything is just so well done. The
voice acting is superb.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Can't discount how much that adds to it.
Really, yeah. And the like breaking the fourth wall stuff is just so cool. All those different things they did. Holy crap!
That's why you need to play 2 all the way through. Like you really, really, really freaking do.
Yeah. The only thing that got me about that game was some of the shooting mechanics are just like not good anymore. And so you definitely got to get used to the way that controlled back then. But
right. Well, I mean, but in a way that serves the game because it discourages you from doing those things.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, of course, there's battles where you have to, and then that's kind of
that
annoying.
Specifically, like that was the sniper battle that you have to do.
Oh yeah, Sniper Wolf.
Holy that was a hot mess. But other than that, the game really does hold up well and is definitely worth a playthrough still even today.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we need to move on.
This is not the Metal Gear Solid podcast that we're doing in the future. Promise. My microphone is spinny wheeling all over the place. Okay.
Last podcast was not a Call of Duty podcast. This is not a Metal Gear podcast.
Right. Okay, so the past several weeks, XERAEN and I have been discussing our favorite games, our top 6 favorite games, if you will. And Or what? Did you put in another one? You put in another one.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
So his
I
top
cheated.
7 favorite games, my top 6 favorite games. So today is XERAEN's top 3 favorite freaking games of all time. So I'm looking forward to hearing the answers to this. I think I have some guesses, but I'm not going to spoil it for myself or anyone. So XERAEN, handing it off to you to do a thing.
I'm grabbing it and I'm doing the thing. So, I'm almost certain. I know you could guess all 3 of these. And if you didn't get them right, you would probably get darn close. I know you'd get 2 of them. Mm-hmm. So, but I have a lot to talk about all of these games, and literally every one of these games I could do multiple podcast episodes on, and not even you talking, like me talking for 2 hours each episode, like each game, like nonstop, no breath.
Do we need to split this up into 3 more podcasts?
No, because I do not need to go down that road of self-indulgence.
Just checking. It's an option. We are in control here, XERAEN. We can do whatever you need.
Well, if we hit like the hour and a half mark, you might want to be like,
and you're still on game 3. Yeah.
So, okay. So I will remind the gentle cyberspacelings out there what my rules were for choosing games. I was not going to pick. So I easily could have picked more than one game in the same series, but I decided to not do that because I wanted to make it a more varied, interesting list and talk about things from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I picked the game that I think for me most either personifies the series or is the most special to me for some reason or another.
I like it.
So anyway, all 3 of these games are games that are a part of a series, and all 3 of these games are not the first game in the series. So that's interesting. So top 3, number 3, my 3rd favorite video game, and this is even ranking these 3, it's difficult, but is BioShock Infinite.
Bruh, and yes.
This is amazing. A really, really awesome video game, and I don't even really know where to start. I could have easily picked BioShock for this.
Yeah.
Dude, I probably could have even picked System Shock too, but that's a little bit of a different kind of thing. So the reason why I picked Infinite over the original BioShock is that BioShock Infinite to me is a little more fun as a game, as a video game, than the original BioShock is, especially going back and playing BioShock after having played Infinite.
Yeah.
Just the Skyrail thing with the hook, and then just integrating that with all the battles and stuff was really cool.
I'm so
really,
sorry.
really cool.
I have to interject this here because
please.
So the coolest thing to me about BioShock Infinite was that they had this whole pre-rendered trailer that they showed at E3 one year where all this crazy stuff was happening, the Skyrail and all that stuff. And then they did it and everyone was freaking standing ovation, holy crap, this is the future. And then, the lights dim and then they move on. And then everybody else, all the developers were like, wait, we have to make that now. But they did, they totally freaking did, and it they nailed it. That's one of those games that's so satisfying when you really understand all the mechanics and how to play it.
Yeah.
Bruh.
And it gives you options. It's one of those things where it's a lot like this is, and I think this is one of the reasons that I really like Warzone. It's a lot like Warzone where you have to think in the moment.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to optimally preserve my health, to do the most damage I can without dying, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the answer is to run away for a bit. Mm-hmm. And very few times, there's not too many video games, especially action heavy first person shooters, where they give you a strategic option like that. But not only that, where you should use that strategic option. Especially when you're talking about harder difficulty levels. And that's one of the things that I really liked about BioShock Infinite too, was that once you beat the game once, you unlock 1999. No, I think you had to beat it on the hardest one. Either way, you can unlock an even harder difficulty level than the hardest one. It's called 1999 mode, which is definitely more of a challenge than the hardest difficulty level. I guess I should preface this by saying that when this game came out, I played it a dozen times in a row.
Dude, I remember that.
Yeah.
So good.
And so when I did unlock 1999 mode, it didn't seem as hard as I thought that it would, because I had already played through the game so many times that I kind of memorized all of it, like at least the flow of it and what to do, the strategies and all that. There's certain like kind of bosses in the game that are more difficult. I think about I can't even remember what character it is. If it's is it Comstock's wife or I don't know, whoever the ghost is in the graveyard that you have to fight. To me, that's really the hardest fight in the game.
I think it is his wife.
Yeah, because it's like it's so just tricky to avoid all of the other enemies while also trying to pin her down and get damage on her. And so things like that, but yeah, the game's so much fun, and you can play it in creative ways, and that's why I ended up playing it so much, because I got to the point where I would play through the game without using any guns, like not firing a single bullet the whole game.
I remember jumping in one of your streams and you were doing that. It's like, bro, that's serious
all
business.
You need. The only thing you have to have is a skyhook melee, and you can beat the game. That and some of the vigors. And honestly, I can beat the entire game with one vigor and the skyhook melee. And that vigor is possession. Because all you have to do is you get one. You rarely have more than like 6 or so guys on you, right? You can possess one, get them fighting a second one, run away from 1 or 2, and then you can take on 2 at almost any difficulty level with just the skyhook. And then you just like kind of kite them around, and the levels are big enough that you can do that, or the areas are big enough that you can do that. And if you know the areas well enough, you know where you can hide, and you know where you can kind of break the AI to like make it where they don't know how to find you, and they path a certain way, and you break around that to come back behind them and that kind of stuff. But so there's a lot of creativity in it, and that's something that I've really toyed with before. The thing is, it's a little bit long of a game to do this. Was like speed running it, just doing, one vigor and skyhook melee. Because I don't think anybody really does that. Because it's a stupid little thing that I thought of to do. Because and if you use 2 vigors, then it's really easy, because there's one where you I can't remember what it's called, but where one of the modes of it, you can like push people back. So all you have to do especially the last fight in the game, when you're on the big ship and there's like just hordes and hordes and hordes coming at you, possess push, and you just push them off the side. Like any enemy goes off the side and they're done. And so there's just like the really creative ways that you can play the game that maybe they intended it. I don't know, but it feels like when you figure out that you can do some of these things, that it wasn't really intended. It's kind of like you're cheating in a way. But it's just from mechanically speaking as a game. And again, this is why I picked it over the original BioShock. There's just so much more you can do with the tools that you have in hand, because the vigors and all that kind of stuff doesn't even mention, like we said, the skyhook and the integration of using that to get around levels, to kite enemies, get out of the way, and you can do the stuff where like you can confuse the AI, like when you run away and they get on the skyhook to come after you, and then you turn around the skyhook and then come at them shooting them. They don't really know what to do. That sort of a thing. There's really cool little things like that if you pay attention to how the game works, that you can really exploit. So that's the game aspect of it. But even more important than that really is just the aesthetic of everything. I mentioned talking about Metal Gear Solid 3 that I don't really like older stuff at all, and I don't. And BioShock Infinite's set in early 1900s. It's like, why would that be something that I'm interested? That's older stuff. Good question, but it's done so well, and it's so immersive, and it's it feels like such a real world, and it's so period specific. It's like you could tell just like how much love, care, and focus they put into developing all these graphical assets, the music, how things work together.
That's been a big thing of mine lately, is like when I play a game and just like getting into the game and looking around and just seeing like, wow, like they put so much love and effort into literally every single aspect of this. It just feels like a different world. Like, there's some, games that you play. It's like, okay, it's like an FPS or something. It's like, okay, I'm just, I'm a dude shooting bad guys doing the thing. But, you play a game like BioShock Infinite or something like that, and it's like, I am in a freaking another world here.
And I guess I need to start talking about the plot of it too. And a lot of people, I think this game's really divisive, and I don't understand exactly why. I think that some people have the perspective that the plot makes people feel like they have a bigger brain than they do, and then they want to deride those people for that. But I don't really think that that's a fair criticism. I think that I don't think that it is a plot that is, unsurpassingly unique. But it's a plot that you don't see much in video games, and certainly not presented the way that it is in BioShock Infinite. I think that the people who criticize the game directly, I mean, there are some fair criticisms of the game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to talk about the things that, maybe more even-handed and it's like have real rationale for it.
Yeah.
But like you go like look on like Reddit and stuff when people like kind of vomit on the game, and it's like the things that they say and how they talk about it. It's really clear that they're just like cynical people coming from a real cynical place in their own life. And that's, to me, that's a little sad, because it's like, okay, it's fine. You don't like it. Just don't like it. I mean, you don't have to rain on other people's parade when they really like something.
Right.
So I just never really understood that. Like, I understand if you want to say, oh, I don't really agree with that perspective, and here's why I don't. I think that, it's a trite message. I think that it's been done better before here, and here. I think that it's, cheap emotionalizing. I mean, some of those things could be fair criticisms of BioShock Infinite. I could see a perspective on that. But you also have to understand that some of the people who are really excited about it are like, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, although arguably maybe somebody who's younger than 15, 14 probably shouldn't be playing this game.
Right. It's pretty heavy.
I mean, it is mature. Yeah. I mean, it is a mature rated game, so maybe not under 18, but I mean, I don't think that there's anything in this game that a 16-year-old couldn't handle. A mature 16-year-old, at least. And I'm sure they've played worse. I mean, right. If they've ever even seen GTA, then, well, I mean, all bets are off.
Yeah.
And so like you have to think about it, like these are young people, just discovering the world beyond, school and their friends, right? Yeah. And then when they find something like this, it could be really revolutionary for their mindset and their perspective on life. And you have to be, sensitive to people having those experiences and allow people to have those experiences. If you shut down those kinds of experiences, you're going to stop anybody from having any inspiration at all in the world at all. And that's just a terrible way to deal with life. Anyway, I didn't mean to talk about that so much. I just, that kind of, I have never been the recipient of those sorts of perspectives on BioShock Infinite, because I've never really voiced my perspective that much on it before. Not, publicly anyway, but I just see it a lot. And every time I see it, I'm just like, who hurt you? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but for the plot though, it's really interesting, and it's got the whole spoilers. If you've not played BioShock Infinite, skip this part, go to the next one. It's got the whole kind of time travel thing, but it's not really time travel. But it is. But there's some aspect to time manipulation. The whole thing with Elizabeth, where she can like basically rip tears between not just space and time, but other versions of the current reality. I mean, many worlds theory, the whole quantum superposition, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like if you know a lot about, or at least some colloquially about things like that, then it's like, okay, yeah, then that's just showing people that. But most people don't. Most people have never heard the term quantum superposition, or even know what it really means, and why that potentially implies the possibility of many worlds. And that, just because we exist as this now, well, maybe there's a world where we exist where my hair is green, and maybe one night where I'm a girl, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's presented in a unique way in a narrative, right? And it's like trying to figure out the coolest thing is when you finally figure out what the dialogue at the very beginning of the game means when the twins are rowing you into the island. You're like the best line, and I know this is overplayed, people talking about it, but it's like ask him if he should row. No, he doesn't row. What do you mean he doesn't row? He doesn't row, meaning that like in no reality, in no alternate universe does he row.
Yeah.
Right. And it's real subtle dialogue things like that imply what's going on and what and you can't really deduce it unless you already know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's pretty similar to the original BioShock. You know, some of the subtle dialogue stuff in the original BioShock, and you don't realize how important that is until, you know, the twist.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess spoilers for that too, but I mean, Would You Kindly, of course, is the big thing there, right? And it's like, you just think that that's just this way that this guy talks, right?
That was the first time in my life that I feel like a video game really like just blew my mind, like with the story. It just, I that moment in that game, I just stood there for probably like 5 or 10 minutes. Like, what? Are you serious? Yeah. What have I been doing with my life this whole time?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I had that kind of moment in one of the other games I'm going to talk about today.
Oh,
that was my first mind-blowing moment in the game. So yeah, I don't want to talk too much more about it other than to say I love the game, of course. I think the ending is at this point, people are just like too cynical about the ending, because the ending is if you are invested in the story and you really care about, you know, Booker and want to find out what happened to Anna and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, I mean, that's a tough story. And I don't even have kids, but I can imagine if you had a kid, like how much that would like just strike you in the heart, the whole story, like, you know, trying to find your daughter or whatever.
Yeah.
And then to find out, you know, extreme spoilers. Please skip if you've not played BioShock Infinite. Please skip if you've not played BioShock Infinite. One more time. Please skip if you have not played BioShock Infinite all the way to the end, or you don't care about extreme, complete spoilers for BioShock Infinite. But at the end, when, you know, all the different Elizabeths surround you and it's like, it's Booker, it's Comstock, I'm both, you know, and then like she baptizes you, kills you, whatever. It's like, oh my goodness, it's just I cried at the end of that game. I mean, I have no shame in saying that, because it was just so emotional. Because I really care. I was like, because two things. One, the emotional aspect of the father-child relationship and how, you know, broken and desperate he had been to do what he did with, you know, basically selling her off to pay off debts versus you know, all of the time things and the weird sci-fi, well, what's going on, curiosity and mystery of it, all that combined together to be kind of just, you know, at the very end, the last line of the game tell you, I mean, you kind of get the idea pretty close to it, but then it's like, yes, what you're thinking, that's true. To like, you know, it's a real denouement moment in literary terms. Denouement is like undoing of the knot, where it's like, here it is. Yeah. And it's like, it just strikes you on all of those elements at the same time. Like I said, it must be a very hurt person who can see that. I mean, I understand being cynical to the point where that doesn't strike you because you've just seen it all. Okay, fine. But where you can't have some sort of, and certainly not empathy, but sympathy for other people who that does strike, and it's just real emotional and meaningful for them to some degree or another, that you just have to go and rain on the parade. I have no, well, I'm not going to say that. I don't understand those people. I really don't.
Yeah. I used to look at stuff like that, like criticism on games and like movies and stories in general. And like, I don't know, I've just gotten to this point where I just like, when it comes to something that I want to enjoy, like a video game or like a movie or something, I try to silo myself as much as possible. Like, especially with movies, like movie trailers have gotten so like, let's just give away all of the plot twists in this movie trailer. And it's like, what the heck? Come on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the only thing when it comes to criticism, like for me, and time is so limited, I try to rely on people that I trust. And those are not usually critics. Sometimes they're critics, but usually it's like you, it's like, you know, my wife, it's like, it's certain people where it's like if they have an opinion on something, I'll listen to it. And I know how my opinion works related to theirs. And especially if they can describe some of the loose reasons why they like or dislike something, I can understand, okay, this is worth my time. This is not worth my time.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Because I definitely do that same thing. Like I don't have all the time in the world anymore to be playing 40-hour long games. So you know, if I'm going to play a 40-hour long game, I want to know that it's going to be something that I am like mega into.
So in other words, you need to play PaRappa the Rappa. You can finish it in one night. It's like,
dude, I am all about games like that nowadays. Like, you know, a lot of people, they crap all over games that it's only like 4.5 hours long. And I'm like, bro, that's awesome. I can experience this whole game in 4.5 hours. Heck yeah, let's do it. You know?
For real.
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing about that is, especially these days, if there's a game that's literally like 4.5 hours, there's probably a lot of little things that you can do to make it a lot more than 4.5 hours if you really liked it. But if you didn't, you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It's awesome. It's like best of both worlds.
Exactly.
But yeah. So BioShock Infinite is, to me, it's a really shining example of what the art of video games can be. Just generally. And I think it's one of the greatest games of all times because of that.
I agree with that 100%. Recently I was watching a YouTube video and somebody asked one of those, like, post a comment letting me know your favorite retro game and your favorite modern game. And I sat there and like, what is my favorite modern game? And I guess, you know, the whole modern and retro, what is modern and retro is debatable.
Right.
But, you know, aside from that, I was thinking like my favorite modern game would either be PT or if that doesn't count, then probably BioShock Infinite. So,
yeah.
It's
there's so much good you could say about the game. If you have any interest in playing BioShock Infinite and you haven't, and you listen to the spoilers, I would say still play it because there's a lot to the game.
It's so
mechanically.
Fun. Yeah. It is a fun game. Like it's a great story, but it's also a very fun game.
Well, and we couldn't in a podcast give you the experience of what it's like of having all that stuff revealed throughout the game and getting that experience.
And I think that kind of stuff is just, it's so important for that to be a video game and versus like being a movie, like experiencing and doing these different things, like especially the first BioShock. If that happened in a movie, it would not be nearly as mind blowing as if like you were the one doing all these things, you know?
Right. That's why I hope they never try to make a BioShock movie. I really hope they never try to make a BioShock movie. Now, System Shock, on the other hand, you could make like a System Shock 2 movie, like Hunter or System Shock generally movie. I think that could really work. And I honestly, I would like to see such an attempt, but
I need to actually finish that game.
I doubt we'll actually ever see it. Look at you, pathetic hacker. Being a flesh and bone.
Right.
So yeah, BioShock Infinite. All right, I'm ready to move on if you're ready to move on.
Yes, let's do it. I literally could sit here and talk about the BioShock series in general the rest of the podcast, but moving on.
Same. All right, so the second one, definitely the other two of these you're going to know. So I had no trouble making this number 2 to my number 1. That was not a problem at all. Had no problem making this a number 2 to the number 3 either. So I think this is just the right position for this game on this list. But this game is a Resident Evil 2.
There it
original is. PS1, 1998.
Yes, Shia LaBeouf clap.
So this is interesting. So I'm a huge fan, like absolute gigantic, huge, can't overstate how big of a fan I am of the first 3 Resident Evil games. And I really like the remake of the first one a lot. I think it's a better video game than the original one, but the original one's just so iconic and groundbreaking and revolutionary that and cheesy that you have to love it. I like the remake of 2. Surprisingly so. I was really, and this is all I'll say about it. I don't want to talk too much about the remake, but I was really angry. Angry is the right word. I don't get really angry about a lot, but I was angry that the Resident Evil 2 remake was over the shoulder. I don't get angry about video games. I just don't. It's just whatever. Yeah. But that it was something that this game was so important to me, and the whole fixed camera angle aspect of how the original games were, and they remade the first one fixed camera angle, and it was an amazing remake. I still to this day, I want so badly a remake of 2 that's like the remake of 1. Mm-hmm. I want that so badly. Anyway, but I did end up really liking the remake for its own thing. I think they changed a lot that I don't like, but they kept a lot that I think, and they certainly kept the spirit of a lot that I think was really cool. And they really did some awesome things with like redesigning the lab. I don't like that they called it the nest. I was almost going to call it the hive, because calling it the nest is really like a pitch or a reference to the Mia Jovovich movies, which I don't really like, and I don't accept as canon. I don't think anybody does, but because it was called the hive there, and so calling it the nest is, and it kind of gets that whole same vibe, but the design of it was really good. Okay, I don't really like the Resident Evil 3 remake because they really butchered the whole game. And we can have a whole conversation about that, and maybe we should at some point. But they took out too many important points of the game. They changed too many things. It's a very different game, and it's an enjoyable video game. The Resident Evil 3 remake. Mm-hmm. It's not enjoyable as a remake of Resident Evil 3. Okay, shelving the remake stuff.
Gotcha.
Back to Resident Evil 2. Like I said, I could have picked potentially Resident Evil 1 here. But I think 2 is a better game. I like 2 better. Resident Evil 2 is the first Resident Evil game I ever played. So I had rented it when it first came out. So it would have been at the beginning of 1998. And I very quickly fell in love with the game, and I wanted to beat it like while I had it rented. There's no way I could have done that.
Yeah.
Without having a guide or something. The thing that really grabbed me is that it is the first video game that ever actually made me scared. I was like, really, I had a lot of anxiety about it. I both like that and didn't like that, right? Because it's like, I want to play, but it's like the whole cover your eyes, but like, right. Sort of thing. So it was really cool in that sense of a video game had never made me feel anything really that intensely before, but certainly not like that before. But the other thing that was really cool about it is it's a puzzle game, right? You have to understand what, and it's the, people will deride it. Again, this is the same kind of people who deride the joy from BioShock Infinite is like, oh, well, it's just go here, go there, go here, go there. And then it's like, it's like really simple once you know. Well, yeah, it's really simple when you know it. Like people really, I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of people really think that speed running this game is dumb. Like you shouldn't speed run it because it's like, there's very little RNG. Although Resident Evil 2, there are people don't know, I think, that there are a few points of very important RNG, especially now if you want to go world record, game breaking RNG or run breaking RNG in the game. But you don't know that if you don't know what you have to do, and especially if you don't know about survival horror games. And at the time, really, what else was there? There was Alone in the Dark, which I had played Alone in the Dark. I take that back. Alone in the Dark was the first game that made me like really scared on PC. I completely forgot that, but that's what made me really fall in love with Resident Evil 2. Is like Alone in the Dark is an extremely cryptic game. I don't know if you've ever played it.
I haven't.
It is so difficult to understand what to do. You can. There's clues, but the clues themselves are very cryptic. But I do like the game. In retrospect, that's a game that it really shaped how I feel about video games and what I want from video games. Resident Evil 2 wasn't nearly as cryptic, so you could figure it out at me being the age that I was. And so it felt like a game that was like Alone in the Dark that I could make progress through. So anyway, I rented it, and I was so like obsessed with it in my mind that I was like dreaming about this game like every night when I had it rented.
Bro, that's not the game to dream about.
It's not, and it was like again, it was like real creepy dream sort of stuff. But anyway, so I didn't beat it, but I ended up getting the game shortly thereafter, and it's just I don't really. know what to say more about the mechanics of the game other than just it was so cool, the different keys and trying to figure out, well, what key is, remembering what key goes to what door. Do I have that key? How do I get that key? The puzzles for this, that, and the other. And then you think that, okay, well, the game is I'm just in this police station that for some reason looks like a museum. And there's actually things that talk about why it looks like a museum. And if you don't read all the documents and stuff, you don't understand. But
I love those kind of details in games, man.
Yeah.
I just love
it. It's like, this is the weirdest looking police station I've ever seen. And it's like, well, there's a reason for that. But then you end up in the lab and it's like all this stuff, it's all connected. And then there's like this nefarious undertone of what's going on. And it was just everything about it. There's just like intrigue everywhere. If you don't, it's so passe now, Resident Evil, for many people because it's been around for so long. But it hadn't been at that time. And the only awareness I ever had of Resident Evil at that point was, I remember this very vividly. I had seen in the mall there in the 80s and 90s, there was a store called Software Etc.
Yes, sir.
And yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
some of you older cyberspace hackers out there like us may remember Software Etc. And the one in the mall that I would go to, it had like glass display in the front, and it always had this TV, for a while had this TV playing games. And so like right around when the PlayStation 1 came out, it was just playing on loop the demo sequence of Resident Evil on PlayStation 1. So I remember was just walking by to go in, but seeing that there was like zombies on it, I was like, oh, cool. Cause I like zombie stuff. Like I had seen Night of the Living Dead and, I had some, cultural understanding of zombies. And the idea of that was just cool to me. So I was like, oh, how cool, a video game. I definitely would like to play that. And so I figured out that was Resident Evil, but I didn't have a PlayStation 1. And when I finally got one, I had forgotten about that somehow until I had seen Resident Evil 2 in the video store to rent. And I was like, that's when I rented it. Anyway, so I don't know where I was going with that. Oh my goodness. Anyway, my brain is going in a million directions about this because I don't really know how to talk about this game that isn't just like saying general things like, I really like this game.
I know that feeling. Like, I know that feeling.
Like, what can you really say other than, it's just, I know what I was saying. Survival horror. So like survival horror was a real new kind of thing there, right? Because the original Resident Evil game kind of took some of the earlier stuff with like Alone in the Dark and all that and kind of honed it into a more playable thing, because Alone in the Dark's very difficult to control. Combat's very difficult. It's super, 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 super clunky. If you think Resident Evil tank controls are clunky, you need to go play Alone in the Dark and see what's up.
Did that come out on PS1 and Saturn? Alone in the Dark?
I don't know. I know that there is there's the fourth Alone in the Dark game, the new Nightmare, that's out on Dreamcast, PlayStation 1, I think. But I don't know about any of the first three if they ever came out on a console. It's possible, but actually, I know that I'm pretty sure they came out on 3DO, actually.
That sounds about right.
But I don't know beyond that if they came out on anything. So people would get really cynical about and think that, the whole concept's passe now, but it wasn't at the time. It was very novel. That's the point I'm trying to make. And so when you first have that brush against it and like you have no context for this, right? There's no cultural zeitgeist around survival horror games or even horror games generally really at that point, or zombie games. It's just like a special thing. And it just like kind of grabbed me. And like, there's so many cool things about it, like the whole 4 scenarios thing. First off, 2 discs, right? And then you pick, do you want to be you want to be the guy or the girl, right? Do you want to be Leon or Claire? And then you put that disc in and then you beat the game. And it's like, oh, wait, you can play what the other character was doing at the same time, because at the beginning of the game, they get split up.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that don't make logical sense. Like both characters use the same key items at the same time. How would they both have that? And it's like some things where how did they not? They would have run into each other way more than they do in the game if they had been going around these same places. So anyway, it's still a little silly in that way. But I mean, that's kind of the whole campy nature of just like zombie movies, the campy aspect of zombie movies. And I definitely appreciate that. But then, having all 4 scenarios was really cool. And it really shaped what I expect from video games, right? I expect to have an emotional reaction to video games now. If a game's going to be one of the games I really enjoy, I expect, having to work for something in the game. Yeah. Of course, you have that with like really hard NES games and stuff like that. But I mean, like, more specifically, not just work really hard at getting good at the mechanics of the game, but have to work at thinking about the story of the game, thinking about how that sort of interacts with the things I can do in the game to put those together to figure out a resolution to move forward in the game. So these days it's hard for me to really like a game that doesn't do that. It's really hard. Yeah. It has to be on the, the whole technical aspect of it. It has to be very extreme on that end to make up for not having that. And I think that's kind of why I like Warzone, because it is super extreme on that end.
Yeah.
So anyway, Resident Evil 2, it's a great video game. You've talked about collecting before. Obviously, you're a pretty avid collector of video games. I am not a huge collector of video games, but the Resident Evil series is something that I collect. And particularly Resident Evil 2. And I'm only missing a couple things now for my collection for Resident Evil 2, and I think some of the things I'm missing are the GameCube version, which I almost had. Like I told you about this when it happened, but I was.
Is that the one you bought that was like the artwork was? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so like I was out of town, and it was actually for my birthday, and we go to this pretty close city. It's like 2.5 hours away, just to kind of get away from time to time. Mm-hmm. And this happened maybe even last year. If it wasn't, it was the year before. So this was pretty recent. And there's a used game, movie, whatever store there, called Pre-Played. And we go there every once in a while just to see if there's anything interesting. And certainly for me, just to see what they got.
Yeah.
And they had, so I got a birthday present for myself, and when I found that they had Black Label Parasite Eve 1, Parasite Eve 2 there, like I've got to buy these.
Freaking love Parasite Eve so much. Every time somebody mentions that game,
that could have been on this list very easily, and honestly probably should have. But we should talk about that game. We're gonna do a whole podcast about Parasite Eve.
For some reason, that game just doesn't pop up in my mind that often until somebody like mentions the music or the game, or I hear the music or something. Some song reminds me of that music or something. I'm like, oh, Parasite Eve.
Yeah, I don't know why they haven't come back to it. Like it's a great IP. I never played Third Birthday, which is the PSP one, the last game in the series. So I don't know what they did with the plot. So maybe that they made it where they can't bring it back. But
I bought that last year. I think it was last year. I have not played it yet. I still got to play the second one.
I've got a disc of it. I don't have the case. I would like to get a case though. I need to get a case. And I've got a PSP. It's just like I rarely ever touch it, to be honest. And I actually got the PSP to play Resident Evil 2 and Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the store had those, and I was like, awesome. And they also had GameCube Resident Evil 2, and this is something that I've wanted for a long time. I'm like, and it was a little more expensive than market, but I was like, it's here. They've got the case. The case looked great.
Yeah.
And the game looked great. I'm like, I'm going to get this. I bought it, and then I got out to the car, and I didn't realize this in the store. And I was opening and just looking through it. The insert on the case was printed on a really good printer.
Yeah,
it was not original. And yes. I'm like, no, I paid perfect condition, complete in box price for this. And I don't even have an original box. No. This is going.
No.
Yeah, that's not happening. And so I took it back, and they were fine about it. They took it back. They refunded me. No big deal. But the Parasite Eves were primo, great condition. No scratches on the case, nothing like that. It was awesome.
Yeah, there's just something to me about, like, I would rather buy a game at a store like that, even if it's like maybe like what it's worth, or maybe a little bit more, just so that game has some, like, I can physically look at it, I can see what it looks like and everything like that. I'm supporting a store, which, retro video game stores, who knows how much longer they're going to be around, that kind of thing. And it has like a story associated with it. Like, I was doing this, I was traveling here doing this thing, and I picked up this game and whatever. I could hop on eBay and buy the game, any day, but it's like, it's just a game at that point. It doesn't really have a story with it. So
yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the ones that I'm missing. From the so, and this complicates my collection. And I want to speak a little bit more right now about the collecting aspect, because this and the next are really the only things that I seriously collect in any real sense. So that's one of the only things that's missing from the US collection. So Resident Evil. I was recently given a gift of the Black Label Resident Evil on PS1, the original release, the non-long box, but it doesn't matter because I've been looking for this thing I've been wanting to get it for a long time. I just never wanted to pull the trigger because I had other things that needed to get into my collection first.
Right.
But by Mr. MichaelK, he kindly gifted me for this recent Christmas the Black Label Resident Evil director's cut version, which is awesome, and it's awesome. And
bro,
I have looked at it.
When I got that thing in the mail, I was like, "Holy crap! This is like, was this ever touched by a human? Like, it looks like it just came out of the shrink wrap and then got mailed to me."
Wait, and that's what I said when you gave it to me. It literally looks like the booklet has never been removed from the case. I'm so afraid to. I don't think I'm going to touch it. I think I'm just going to leave
it.
Right. For anybody who doesn't know, like, notoriously removing the booklet from PlayStation 1 games messes up the booklet. Like, it's just so hard to take it out and put it back in without tearing something, just creasing something, just even bumping up against the side and creating marks on it where you can clearly see that it's been removed.
Yeah.
So little fact for you guys. So yeah, I think the only thing, so you also gave me a couple years ago, the game.com Resident Evil 2, which is awesome.
That's shot up in price a lot recently. Actually.
I know. Cause I was like, I need to buy an open one so that when I get the game.com, I can play it. And then I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Cause I remember seeing like complete in box, like unopened, like not touched, $20. And it's like, not that now.
Yep. I saw somebody running one on an auction the other night, and it sold for about $80. And I think they sell for about $100 on eBay. So actually that person got a deal at $80.
Oh my goodness. And then also you got me the Dreamcast one too. So it's like I Resident Evil 2 US, I'm fairly certain the only thing I don't have is GameCube, because I have the non-DualShock release, I have the DualShock release, and I have the greatest hits release of Resident Evil 2 on PlayStation 1. I also have like I said, the Dreamcast, I have the game.com. I'm trying to think of what else. I think that's it. But I also collect the Japanese version, so Biohazard. And as far as I'm aware, I do have a complete collection of all PlayStation 1 Biohazard games.
That's awesome.
I have, the Black Label Resident Evil 1. I have the Director's Cut Resident Evil 1. I have the DualShock Director's Cut Resident Evil 1. So there's 3 releases of Resident Evil. This is so complicated. I think there's 3 in Japan and there's 4 in the US.
Whew.
The US has long box, non-long box, Director's Cut, and Greatest Hits Director's Cut. Oh, actually, that's not true. US did not. Yes, it did. There's 4. Long box, non-long box, Director's Cut, and then Greatest Hits Director's Cut. The Director's Cut that's not Greatest Hits does not have the crappy soundtrack. The Greatest Hits that is Director's Cut that is Greatest Hits has the crappy soundtrack.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anyway, so I have Biohazard Director's Cut, Biohazard DualShock Director's Cut, Biohazard 2, Biohazard 2 DualShock, Biohazard 3, and Biohazard Gun Survivor, which is the Japanese version of Resident Evil Survivor.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I told you when I got them, like all of them, like this was a meticulous Japanese person that I bought this from, because these things were all perfect. All the spine cards, again, for people who don't know, Japanese releases have like a paper spine card that it gets shrink wrapped on top of the case. That's so that there's a lot of space condensation in Japan. So when they have them in like kiosks or shops, they can stack them vertically so that you can just read the paper flap. And it tells more about the game than just the name of the game. So
okay, I actually didn't know what those were for. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Because like if you look at any of the stores, especially like in Tokyo or any of the cities, especially Tokyo, like they have game shops that like literally 2 people can fit in. Like you just walk down, it's like a little bitty like one slot store, and it's like it's open air to the front, so it's like an open mall sort of thing. And then like they have like one row of things in the middle, and it's like you can walk in, around, and back, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so like they have to have fit as much as they can in these little spaces. And there's no telling what rent is for that kind of a shop. In Tokyo, holy crap. Anyway, and this is something that I wasn't aware actually was the case. I think it's Resident Evil 2 has a sticker sheet in it. It like originally came with like stickers for like the different, like it has like the Stars logo and has like
That's cool.
like Resident, like Biohazard, and like different things about the game. I think it has like the dogs or whatever, and it's like brand, like this literally looked like it just came off the shelf. And it's like, oh man, it's like I don't even want to touch these things. It looks that good. So I'm just very happy about having all that. And I cannot explain to you how good of a deal. Like I think I bought all of that stuff. It was like one guy had all that in one auction, and I think I paid $100. Like I could sell it now for more than that.
Yeah.
And who knows where it's going to go. Most people don't really collect Japanese stuff. There's some things, Japanese stuff they collect, but a lot of things they don't for some reason.
It's just the way to go. I mean, okay, we need to stop talking about game collecting so much because we are going to do a whole podcast on that.
That's true.
But yeah, I think Japanese stuff is like totally the way to go for so many things. As long as there's like not a lot of text that you need to read and stuff like that, But that was the cool part about all the Resident Evil games is they take place in the US. And so it's all voiced in English, even the Japanese releases, and it's subtitled in Japanese. Yeah. That's cool.
And this is one of the reasons and one of the reasons that Japanese is so big in Biohazard Resident Evil community is for speed running, because text scrolling is faster with Japanese characters than it is with English characters. And so literally there's time saved just by playing the Japanese version.
That's cool.
The US version. Yeah. But yeah, we could talk much more about that kind of stuff when we talk about game collecting directly. But yeah, so not much more to say about Resident Evil than I'm an OG Resident Evil fan. I'm OG in the sense that I really don't like all the new stuff. I don't really. 4 is a great game. It's not a Resident Evil game. I really like 4 as a video game. If it didn't have Resident Evil on it, it would be one of my favorite games, probably. Top 20 for sure, 25. I don't like 5. I don't like 6 at all. I think 6 is the worst numbered game. 7's pretty good. I was surprised by 7. I've not finished 8, so I can't really give an opinion on it. Although it's a little too much video gamey and campy for me.
It's so video gamey.
I understand why. I think I understand why, but it's just a departure from what the series means and is to me. Yeah,
that's pretty much how I feel about 7 and 8 is like if you just removed the whole Resident Evil thing from them, I think they would be pretty cool games. And not that I don't like them, but I don't, when I think of Resident Evil, I don't think of 7 and 8.
Yeah, I feel you. So for me, Resident Evil is RE1, 2, and 3, and RE Remake. 0 as well. 0's a good game. People don't give 0 enough credit.
Is that for GameCube?
That's originally was a GameCube. Okay. Yeah, that was the game that came out when they did the original remake on GameCube.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's why they did the original remake, because they felt weird that they were going to come out with this Resident Evil 0, but you couldn't even play the first Resident Evil game on GameCube. So it's like, well, let's just remake it.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil 0 is great because it literally ends right as Resident Evil 1 starts.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's like the same minute, like literally the same minute.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this really quick, XERAEN.
Sure.
So should I play 0 before I want to play through all of them? I don't know how long this is going to take me. Should I play through 0 before I play 1?
It doesn't matter. I don't think. I don't think that 0 gives away anything that you probably know enough about the plot in 1 that that 0 is not going to give away anything unique that's going to spoil anything for you. Are you going to play the remake of 1 or are you going to play the original 1?
I don't know. That was another thing I was going to ask you. What do you think?
I think that if you play 0 first, you definitely need to play the remake. Okay. Because that's what it connects with the remake. It doesn't really connect. It does. I mean, plot wise, it definitely connects with the original 1, but the aesthetic's the same as the remake because they made them at the same time.
When you say remake, you mean the GameCube one?
Not it doesn't matter. I mean, because the
thing.
The HD remaster is the same.
It's the same.
It's the exact same game. The only difference is they re-rendered all the textures and everything and scenes to HD.
Okay,
that's literally the only difference.
Okay.
Well, that's not. I think there's a couple different modes, but as far as like the actual game itself, there's no difference.
Gotcha.
And same with 0 HD remaster. It doesn't matter. I honestly, if you were going to play it, unless for some reason you just want to play it on GameCube, I would say just play it on PC or PS4 or whatever. Just play the remasters, HD remasters of both 0 and 1.
Okay.
And in fact, I would probably just recommend that. But I it's hard for me to say one way or the other which you should play first. I would probably say play 1 first.
Okay.
You could do this. You could play 1, then play 0, then play 2 if you're going to go in order. That's probably what I would do because you're going to catch more in 0 if you've already played 1, but not a lot.
Yeah. Deal.
Yeah. So yeah, the remasters are really, really good. Remakes of 1 and 0 are really good. Like I said, 0 is just so underrated. Most people say it's a really hard game. Like, yeah, it's a really hard game. Warning for you, 0 is super hard compared to most of the other games.
Noted.
One of the biggest reasons for that is that in 0 there's no item box.
Oh, yikes.
Yes. But what you can do is you can drop items anywhere and you can pick them up later. So you just have to remember where you dropped them.
Gotcha. Okay. Noted.
But 0 has so many cool things. Like you have 2 characters, right? And so some of the puzzles you have to use both characters. And so most you can have them together or you can press a button and separate them and play as one or the other. And so,
okay.
Yeah. And so you can imagine what kind of neat puzzles they can come up with that kind of a mechanic. A lot of people didn't like that. I thought it was a really cool evolution of the formula. I mean, I don't think that every Resident Evil game should be like that, but I would love to have another fixed camera angle Resident Evil game with 2 characters like that.
Yeah.
I would 100% play that. Even if it's harder than 0, worth it. So anyway, I think it's about time to move on to the final entry. If we have time, I don't know what the time is looking like.
We are at 1 hour and 7 minutes.
Wow.
But this is going to be a long one, so proceed.
All right. Buckle up. All right, so I know you can guess this one. So in similar vein to Resident Evil 2, my favorite video game of all time, this is without question, this is always going to be in this slot. I can't even, at this point, it's so emotionalized, I can't even imagine what a game would have to be like to displace this as number 1. Because it's one of those things where like things happen to you at a certain point in your life. You play games at a certain point in your life. Everything's going on around you in a certain way in your life, and you relate that to the game, and the game relates to that in some ways symbolically, and it just gets kind of lodged in your mind and your heart in that way. And this is a game like that for me. And this is Silent Hill 2.
There it is.
And
there it is.
Again, Silent Hill is a series where I could pick multiple games to put on this list somewhere, but there's no way that any of them but Silent Hill 2 would be number 1. There's just no way. And maybe that maybe it is passé, maybe it's overplayed, maybe it's overblown, maybe it's overhyped. That a lot of people say that Silent Hill 2 is such a great game, and many people say that Silent Hill 2 is their favorite game. But I don't care what other people think, because if they want to think that, they can just be wrong because they're wrong. And I don't really, it's going to be hard for me to explain the reasons why Silent Hill 2 has such magnitude in my life, and why it's so important to me. Some of them are personal, like things that were happening to me in my life at the time that really, I won't say directly reflected in the game, but there's things in the games that have echoes of the same kind of feelings of what was going on in my life. There's things in the game where it's just like, it's a scary game, and I like scary stuff. I like horror movies, and so like it gives you that feeling, and like that pulls you into, especially at a time in my life when I was. So the game came out in 2001, like September, and by the way, I'm pretty sure this is the first game I got on launch day.
That's cool.
This is a game. The reason I wanted a PlayStation 2 was because I found out that Silent Hill 2 was going to be on it. Yeah. And so it's like, well, I have to have a PlayStation 2 because I love the first Silent Hill game so much. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to organize my thoughts because I don't know how to make a narrative about all this, because it's just an explosion of emotion, an explosion of this is just. I'm sure this is how you felt with like the Sonic 3 thing, especially because like for you, that was like even a younger age. And so like you have like the emotions of a kid where that's just like all, bouncing around in your head and in your mind anyway.
Total chaos.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of how I feel here. Maybe it makes sense to me to talk a little bit more about why I was so adamant about getting Silent Hill 2 on launch day and having a PlayStation 2 and all that. So I like, obviously I said I'd gotten to Resident Evil 2 like right about when it came out, which was like the beginning of 1998. And so this is about a year later. I'm in high school at this point. So in 98 in January, I was still in middle school, and that's when I really got into Resident Evil. And then so the year later, it was first year high school, and I had a new friend in high school that I had met, didn't go to middle school with them. And I remember this so vividly. We were in gym class, and for some reason, he and I weren't doing anything that day in gym. We were just sitting in the bleachers. It was just us. So I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't feeling well or something. Wasn't feeling well. I hated gym. And I'm pretty sure he was actually like injured at the point or something, like broken leg or something. Yeah. Anyway. And we were talking about stuff, and he's like, man, I just rented this really weird game this weekend and was playing it, and he was describing it to me. I'm like, wow, that sounds super strange. And he's like, yeah, it's really like Resident Evil 2, really, but it's like weirder. I'm like, you have my attention. And he was talking about Silent Hill, the original Silent Hill. And so immediately I'm like, I've got to play this game. And so I go and rent the game, and it's like, I have to have this game. And I don't know how to describe why it hooked me so much. Of course, it's got the whole Resident Evil thing where it's survival horror. There's puzzles and all that kind of stuff. But there's this whole other dimension to Silent Hill. If you've ever played like the old school Resident Evil games and then the old school Silent Hill games, you know that Silent Hill is like, weird is appropriate, but it's almost not strong enough of a word about what Silent Hill is. It's strange, odd. It like no other game series, the old Silent Hill games to me did a masterful job of taking whatever, plain boring life you have and like making that fade so far into the background and putting you into such a place that is so alien. There's the word, alien, different. It's like, yeah, I see buildings, and I'm going in rooms, and I see like tables and chairs and things that are normal, common, everyday items. But we don't have chairs like that in my world. We don't have tables like that. It's like everything about this world is just off in some little way. Yeah. And that really hooks you because you're always like looking at stuff, and you have to look at stuff. You have to find items. You have to find clues to figure out how to, get through puzzles and all that kind of stuff, while at the same time not dying because these weird things are chasing you, these weird pterodactyl things outside. And like, you can't really see a whole lot when you're outside. It's super foggy. And it's like, obviously there's technical reasons for that we can talk about, but you don't know that as a kid. You're just like, wow, this is part of the creepiness that it's like, I can't see very far. And then there's like these weird dog things that like jump at you. And then finally you're doing all these things. This was what my friend was describing to me. You run to the edge of the road and it's like just empty. It's like off into nothing. So anyway, there's all this stuff, and then you finally get to the other world in Silent Hill. If you haven't played Silent Hill, this is not the place to talk about this. We can have a podcast about Silent Hill, but it's just like you take that weird off world and then it goes straight to hell, like almost like literally going straight to hell. And then it's like not only is it hell, but the hell is off too. It's something weird and just alien about the hell there as well. And so it's like, what is this game? So playing through that whole game and getting to the end of it, and getting the multiple endings and trying to figure out what the real true full story is there was such a interesting part of my life on Silent Hill 1 that it's like, okay, I get to do it again. And it was something I don't know. And the best part about Silent Hill 2, and I think some people don't like this. I think some people do like this. I think it's one of the biggest features and best things about Silent Hill 2. It is not related to Silent Hill 1, other than Silent Hill. And so if that break between 1 and 2 didn't happen, there wouldn't be this idea that Silent Hill is a character in the game itself. The city itself or town itself is a character in the game. It would be like, okay, well, all these stories are happening in this place. It just so happens that they're happening in this place. But making the game of 2 a completely different person, completely different plot, completely different everything from 1, makes the town itself important in a way that it wouldn't have been otherwise. Yeah. And I think that is the most masterful thing that Team Silent ever did. Of course, they have like all of these details of like Akira Yamaoka with the audio, all of the graphics and stuff, and just all of the how it just creates this oppressive environment of despair and hopelessness. And like it kind of just grows and grows and grows throughout the game. Talking about all of them, but specifically Silent Hill 2 here. It's like that is complete artful, masterful work in that kind of a weird way, right? But the genius masterstroke was separating completely the characters and plot of 2 from 1 and making it completely different. Silent Hill would not exist. I don't even know if there would be a Silent Hill 3 if that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's that. I don't know how to talk about Silent Hill 2 without extreme spoilers, so I'll talk a little bit about that. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But going back to what you said about that moment in BioShock where it's like, that real shock moment, right? Where it's like, oh, what? Where a game just blows your mind for the first time. Mm-hmm. So extreme spoilers on Silent Hill 2. Be aware. You've played 2, right?
Yeah.
All the way through.
Yeah.
Okay, so the moment when you put the tape in the VCR in the hotel room in Lakeview Hotel and you see yourself killing your wife. This whole game's about you trying to find your wife. She's gone. And like she died because she had a disease, but then she sends you a letter after she's dead. And then it's like, oh, I'm in Silent Hill. Come find me. And then the whole game is you trying to find her or understand why this letter came to you. And then all this weird stuff's happening to you. And like all these things are trying to kill you, and you kind of go into this like a hell realm, and then you come out and you go back and forth, and then you finally get to this hotel, and then you find a tape, and you watch yourself killing your wife, and it's like this whole moment, like, what is this game? What is this game trying to tell you? And obviously, it's the whole idea that it's like a repressed memory, and you're living out the guilt of that, and then it's like, then it starts all these meta questions about the game. Like now, there's a lot more. People understand a little bit more about what Team Silent was trying to communicate with it. They've said some things. There's some better, and there's various interpretations, and there's some pretty canonical interpretations. But at the time, nobody had any of that. Yeah. And so it's like all these meta questions happening. Yeah. Well, is this tape real? Is this tape just the town messing with you in another way? Did you just repress that memory? Is this whole experience real? Are you just hallucinating everything? All these kinds of things where it's like, there were lots of fan theories that were, I think, very interesting. And that was one of my favorite things about after beating the game and reading all about it is all the different things that people interpret from the game. And that's what's really cool about it. In a way, this to me is why Silent Hill as a survival horror game is set head and shoulders apart from Resident Evil, is that most things in Silent Hill can be taken symbolically and as such can be interpreted by whoever plays it to mean different things for them. Mm-hmm. We can talk about, yes, there's a canonical interpretation of things, but that doesn't matter. The whole thing about art is that how do you relate to it? How does it change you? How does it make you think about things differently? How does it make you feel about things differently? How does it open your eyes, open your heart, open your mind to new things in your life? And this is a game that really did that a lot for me because of, at the time, I don't know how to say this other than I was going through some pretty difficult emotional things not long after I had beaten the game. And so I went through and played the game again. I listened to the music a lot, and it really was transformative to me about how I feel about the world and understand about the world, that like, look, yeah, I'm going through some bad things, but there's some way other worse things that could be happening. And even in the face of these worst things happening, some people push forward and try to understand answers to their questions that they have. They don't just shut down. Yeah. And it's like some of that's empowering, but some of that game is really disempowering. And sometimes it's good to feel that disempowerment that makes you feel sometimes worse than you feel in your real life, because then that gradient, that differential makes your own life feel bearable. And I think there's a lot of utility in that. And I think that there's not enough said about how things like that can really help with catharsis, emotional stability, things like that. And for me, this game helped me in that way, in a way. And when you tell somebody that, it's really hard for me to even have this discussion about it, because you tell somebody that and they're like, how in the world did a game like that do that to you? You know what I mean? It's like, because you see the game on the surface and it just looks like some horror thing.
I don't know, dude. I think so many people have this perception that like video games are just toys, so they don't really take anything like what you're discussing seriously. It's like, it's just a toy, how could it? But like, I don't know, bro. Like, even for me, thinking about toys, like, there are toys that I played with as a kid that remind me of like a specific time, a specific event, a specific emotion, like all kinds of stuff like that. That's why this room I'm surrounded by things like that in this room, different memories and stuff like that. So
absolutely. I feel you. Absolutely. And I really don't know how to communicate so much about why I love this game other than I can do it on a technical level, because it is, like I said, it is a masterpiece with respect to separating itself from the first game, but even way beyond that, with creating an atmosphere, making that atmosphere not just despairing and oppressive, but also unique and characteristic. Like the character that break makes of the town is further reinforced by the ambience, by the aesthetic, by the music. The music is just, I think Akira Yamaoka is one of the, he's very celebrated, but I still think he's a very underrated game musician, right? Making soundtracks for games. Just because he took a very orthogonal approach to it. Because I mean, you listen to like Resident Evil 2 soundtrack. Yeah, it's mysterious, but it's still kind of quasi orchestral, and it's very conventional in that way. Yeah. Silent Hill soundtrack is in no way conventional, except for some certain tracks that are kind of like rock tracks, like Laura's theme. The original Silent Hill theme is a little bit like that, but definitely Laura's theme is where he really gives himself permission to bring that rock stuff into Silent Hill soundtrack. And I think that's cool, because that gives the soundtrack itself another element of that dual nature, where the rock is like the normal life, but then all the weird tracks are like the other world in the game. So yeah, phenomenal video game, phenomenal music, phenomenal experience. It keeps building to the end. And there's so much symbology with everything that happens in the game, not just the plot, but like the things objects in the game, characters in the game, obviously, red pyramid thing, what people call pyramid head. That's something that, and I'll put on my angry OG hat real quick. I'm very angry that red pyramid thing appears in other games aside from Silent Hill 2. Does not belong in any other game. He is the manifestation of James's guilt, of James's self-oppression, the thing that he has to overcome. That's why at the end of the game, he says, I don't need you anymore. Like, cause he's accepted what's happened and he's accepted things and moved on. So I don't need you anymore. So if he doesn't need Pyramid Head, why does Pyramid Head show up in any other games? It's fan service. And I pretty much despise the fact that he's in any other game. But yeah, the series generally great game. Have you played 3 yet?
No.
Okay, that sucks because I really want to talk about that.
No.
I can't if you haven't. 3 is the last good, I almost said Resident Evil, the last good Silent Hill game. I don't think that'll ever, I know that will never change because PT's not really a game. PT's kind of just like a little experience. And it doesn't relate in any meaningful way to Silent Hill.
It's the same like, Resident Evil 7 and 8 thing. Like, I don't really consider it a Silent Hill thing. It's just its own thing. It may have that label on it or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 4 wasn't even going to be a Silent Hill game at first. Then it was, and it's okay for what it is. I'm not a huge fan of it. Some people really like it. Whatever. And I'm okay with people liking what they like. I just don't. Shattered Memories is an amazing game. I could do a whole podcast on Shattered Memories.
I love that game.
Is so underrated and so overhated. I don't understand how a huge fan of Silent Hill can play Shattered Memories and not really, really like it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand that. It's like you didn't understand what they were trying to do with the game if you don't like Shattered Memories. The original games, not just Shattered Memories. You don't understand what they were trying to do with the original games if you don't appreciate Shattered Memories.
Mm-hmm. I think
Shattered Memories is another game that like gave me dreams about stuff in a way that gave me an extra appreciation about it.
Yeah, that's cool. I think Shattered Memories from a gameplay perspective, I think it's a good example of how to use motion control correctly instead of just, throwing it in there to tick a box or something. Like, I think like a lot of the puzzles, like actually like specifically the one I think of is like where you're like using the Wiimote to like unzip a zipper.
Yeah.
It's like, you could do that with a thumbstick, but it's like, it's not as cool as,
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people think that that's gimmicky. But I think the whole idea of Silent Hill, well, not the whole idea. One of the big ideas of Silent Hill is immersion, and that just contributes to that. I think one of the big criticisms of Shattered Memories is there's no combat. Mm-hmm. I think that adds to it. That completely is in line with what Silent Hill is supposed to be. Silent Hill is not supposed to be a combat game. It's supposed to be a disempowering game.
Yeah.
Well, what's more disempowering than making you not able to actually exert any power over any or force over anything else?
Yep.
I'll just reiterate. I think that if somebody doesn't appreciate Shattered Memories, you can make criticisms about the plot and about what maybe it's a little cliche to have the way that the psychology aspect strays the game into different ways and all that. And it's like, okay, maybe it is, but why do you really think that? Either way, that's a more fair criticism than saying, oh, the combat is missing. You don't understand what Silent Hill's about if that's your criticism of Shattered Memories. Anyway, PT, amazing as well. I don't want to spend too much about that, but yeah, I had real hope. And I know so many other people were like this, had real hope that Silent Hill's actually coming back with PT. Mm-hmm. Like, the good thing about PT is it did spawn a real renaissance in horror games. The problem with that whole thing is like you get the crap with the good too.
Yeah, 100%. I've really picked up on a lot of that recently. How like, or not necessarily recently, but like around the time when PT died or got murdered, and and all these other games come out that like they're very clearly influenced by that, but they're just not good at all. And some of them, like some of that stuff is pretty good, but
and some of them look like they're gonna be good but never come out. I'm looking at you, House on the Road.
Yeah, that.
I really wish that I don't know.
I
don't really know the whole story about what happened to that guy. I think he got hired by some firm doing stuff, and so now he's doing it for his job, and he's like, oh, okay, cool.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that trailer is pretty awesome. But So we actually have an entire podcast at some point we're going to do on PT and all the things surrounding PT. So yeah, we will return to this subject at some point.
So I'm sure I'd have a million other things to say about Silent Hill 2, but I'll leave it at that. The thing that I really like about Silent Hill 2, and I've got a shirt on, and I won't be able to get it where you can actually see it, but maybe it's hard to see. Anyway, it's got in the middle of it's got Mira, which there's an ending. Silent Hill games have multiple endings. That's really cool, right? And depending on what you do or don't do in the game can affect those endings. I think Silent Hill 2 actually has a really ingenious way of determining one of that. One of the characters, again, spoilers of Silent Hill 2, if one of the characters is kind of like your wife, she looks like your wife, but she doesn't dress like your wife. She doesn't really talk really much like your wife, but she looks like your wife. And her name's Maria, your wife's name's Mary. There's different points in the game when you can decide if you want to be closer to her or not. Like, there's one part in the hospital where she has to lie in the bed and like you can leave her there and never come back. You don't ever have to see her again until you finish that section, or you can come back and look at her and talk to her a few times. That affects the ending. That significantly affects the ending. You can try, if you like hit her accidentally, the more you do that affects the ending. Yeah. There's just little subtle things like that throughout the game that will affect the ending in Silent Hill 2. And so one of the endings that you can get is called the dog ending, which basically there's a room in the hotel that is locked and you can get a key and unlock it. And if you do, you trigger the dog ending, which is basically there's a Shiba Inu standing on a chair, balancing on like this control console with like video screens and all this. And she's like moving levers back and forth. And then he comes in and he said, "So it was all your work." And he falls down on his knees and is just like kind of no sort of thing. So the whole idea is it's a joke ending that the dog's controlling the whole town and Pyramid Head and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So pretty funny. And Mira is the name of the Shiba Inu. And then there's a cute song that plays on the credits when you get that ending.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And similarly, there's a UFO ending in the first game. I think there's a UFO ending in the second game and the third game. That.
Man, it's been forever since I've played those games. I really need to replay them.
Yeah, you need to play 3, dude.
Yeah, that too.
You need to do that so we can talk about it.
There's just not enough time in the day for all these freaking video games that I want to play, man.
I feel you, dude. I feel you.
Man.
But that's my list, man. That's the top 6, 7.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I Silent Hill 2 is really, really good. Again, I need to replay that. I loved the first one. The first Silent Hill was actually, so I didn't really play a lot of horror games when I was younger. I didn't really get into them later until like basically you and I met. And you were like, you have to play Silent Hill. You have to play Silent Hill. So I played Silent Hill. And that freaking locker thing with the cat, I will speak. I will be on my deathbed talking about this freaking locker with this cat. Like that scared the freaking crap out of me when that happened. That was like the first time in a game that like I screamed and I had like, I was, that whole thing where it just sets this whole atmosphere, everything, and it just teleports you there, and then something unexpected happens and it just, it wrecks you. Like
there's a similar moment in Silent Hill 3 that it's not really a jump scare in that same way, but something happens and it's like anybody who's played Silent Hill 3, you know what I'm talking about. And it's like you need to play it because you need that experience. And there's some plot stuff that's interesting in 3 too that you just need to play.
I'm writing down Silent Hill 3 on my little sticky note here so I can add it to my actual list. I'm like trying to organize a list so I'm not totally overwhelmed with all these games that I want to play. So I'm kind of like trying to organize, okay, how long is it going to take me to beat this? Maybe I can put this in before this one that might take, 20 or 30 hours or something and, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah.
Just put it on easy. Just play it.
Yeah, I have no shame with that kind of thing nowadays, man. Like as long as the game is not going to do that thing where if you play it on easy, it's not going to really let you experience it. It's going to give you some stupid ending or something like that.
Right.
You know, if it's the same game, I have no problem just playing it on easy so I can experience it. Unless it's just like miserable to play it on easy. Like this is like the most boring thing I've ever played. You know, one of those situations. But yeah. Well, XERAEN, anything else on your favorite games of all time?
Not really. I don't think the biggest things, like I said before, is I don't know what kind of game would have to come out to really displace Silent Hill 2. I think that the only thing that in all these years that I've ever thought maybe had a chance was PT. But I mean, it was so mysterious and unknown what it was actually going to be that was kind of a crapshoot even in and of itself. And it's like, at this point, PT, well, I don't want to talk about it, but it's kind of got its own weird life in its own way. And it's never going to be what we thought it was for sure. Likely.
Yeah. Same.
Certainly Death Stranding's no PT.
No, it's definitely not. That's most definitely its own thing. Yeah. Most definitely. Well, I guess we can close the book on that, XERAEN. No more talking. So. That's set in stone. We can never discuss this again. Ever.
You know that's not true.
Yeah, you're right.
That's not true.
You're right. We'll probably talk about it again next week. Anyway.
That's right.
CyberSpace, it's been excellent. It's been excellent. And there's a man there. His name is XERAEN, and he's going to tell you exactly where you can find him out there in cyberspace land.
You cyberspacelings can find my face out in cyberspace at XERAEN.net, XERAEN.net. And that will give you several links to all of the places that out there that I do things. Yeah, I mean it's a bunch of links. There's other podcasts I'm on. There's other stuff that I do from time to time when I have time. But a lot of my time I help this guy, Mr. MichaelK. You tell people where people can find you.
Which you can go to michaelk.net/links and it will take you to a nice listing of links with all the things that basically both XERAEN and I do. So yeah. Anyway, it has been excellent, cyberspace. It has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for listening wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on the YouTubles, hi and goodbye. We are very thankful that you're here, and we are looking forward to seeing you next time out there in cyberspace land. Take care, everybody. Peace. Deuces.